heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before you, so now I'll say it again. If anyone is preaching to you a gospel contrary to the one you received, let him be accursed. Paul begins to state that if we or an angel should preach a different gospel, then that person is cursed. Paul warns the Galatian church that the gospel they were called to doesn't change and needs to be the very gospel that they preach. They cannot look at any other gospel, whether coming from a man or an angel. We must be, as in our preaching and teaching, just as Paul. Paul states in 1 Corinthians 2:2, I determined not to know anything among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. The gospel is what Jesus did and nothing else. We may have people proclaim an angel visited them with a new gospel or message, but God clearly said through Paul that the gospel was set, and Jesus Christ himself plainly said in Mark 8:31 through 32. And I want to reiterate, it says he plainly said, that he would suffer many things, be rejected, die on a cross, and he would rise again. And that's the gospel, and that's the gospel from Jesus' own words. We have to stay pounded on that. We can't listen to another gospel from an angel or someone that proclaims they've been giving a message from God differently. That's the gospel, and it never changes. Forgetting the gospel is not only detrimental to us, but it's detrimental to those that we are preaching to. Because if we are preaching a false gospel, we are putting a curse on those people as well. Because those people, if they don't know the gospel, they're deemed for hell. And it's important that we remember that in our teaching and preaching. Finally, in verse 10, Paul says, for I am not now seeking the approval of man or of God, or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. We cannot forget that the gospel we preach pleases Christ rather than man. The gospel seeks to please Christ rather than man. We do not seek to please man because we are servants of Christ. We serve a holy, righteous, and worthy master. The other day, Cheston gave an awesome illustration to us, and he had us close our eyes. And we had to think about someone that was in slavery, and they were nasty and they were dirty. And like when I had that in my mind, I was just thinking someone was nasty, had chains on them. And you know, we were those slaves at one time. We were nasty, we were dirty. But someone came and they paid the price for us to set us free. And that man was Jesus and the gospel. And it came and it set us free. But we've been set free, but we still choose to be servants. The word there, bond servant, it implies that someone that has been set free, but because their master has been so great and he's so holy, righteous, and worthy, you want to work for that master because he set you free. The gospel motivates us as servants of Christ to please him rather than man. He is the one that has set us free. 1 Thessalonians 2:4 states, but just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak not to please man, but to please God, who tests our hearts. We seek to please the one who enlists us. We can see that in 2 Timothy 2:4. The gospel and the words that we proclaim are to please Christ. We owe it all to him because he is the one that saved us. The gospel that we proclaim is seeking to please Christ. We seek the glory of God in our bodies because we have been called and changed by the gospel of Christ. So in conclusion, we may forget minor things from our past, classmates, birthdays, exam scores, but we cannot forget the gospel. Paul reminded the Galatian believers, and he reminds us that we cannot forget. God is the one who called us to the gospel. The gospel doesn't change. A false gospel is a curse. And our aim is to please Christ with the gospel we proclaim. It says in 1 Corinthians 10:31, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God.